Welcome to the Pulse of Story podcast. I am Derek Christopher. Of course, I am here with the great Mark Travis. Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Mark, I'm really excited by our guest today because I was going to Hawaii, and Mark lives in Hawaii, and Mark calls me up. He says, I saw this play, and when you're out here, I have to take you to this play. It's the most amazing thing. He says it's funny, it has heart, it has compassion, and it's just a fantastic play, and you got to go see it. I go, what's it called? And he goes, The Golden Gaze. And I'm like, The Golden Gaze. I go, you already sold me on the title. It's like, let's do it. And so we went to this play, and it was fantastic. It was just fun, and it had so much warmth and love. And it was written by a guy named Ryan Okinaka, who is our guest today. He goes by Oki, so we're going to call him Oki. And Oki he's been an improv performer for over 10 years. He's done stage, he's done TV, he's done film. He's written, this is his third produced play that he's done. The first one was called I Hula in 2016, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. And then Who You Again in 2022.
Yep.
And now he's got The Golden Gaze. And Ryan Okinaka, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Very excited to have you. Now, Mark, if you don't mind, here's actually my first question, which I found this was so interesting, especially in today's environment and whatnot. When I was reading about how you started to write this and what it means to you, you said that the Golden Girls, you said it was four women of a certain age that resonated with the queer community on an epic scale. And I just thought that that was so interesting. And I was wondering if you can just talk a little bit about how you came to write this play.
Yeah. I wrote this little story in my writer's note. I my last play that was produced in 2023 was Who You Again, and it was so well received that people kept asking me like, "Oh, what are you gonna write next? What are you gonna write next?" Right? Um, so I didn't know. I didn't have anything. I thought I didn't have any ideas. So I just kind of like waited for inspiration to strike. And I live with my brother. He's in the room right next door to me right now.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready for my day, and I heard sounds coming from his bedroom from the show Golden Girls. And it dawned on me that this is one of his favorite shows. He just always had it on repeat. At the time, I had written Who You Again as a way to like honor my grandmother. I Hula was a way that my first play, I Hula, was a way to honor like my father. So I wanted to write a play that like was for my brother. So that was the initial inspiration, was the fact that he always watched the Golden Girls, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna write a play for him, maybe it's one that would be inspired by the Golden Girls.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was
And
yeah,
and
that was really
now, of course, you went to USC Film School. You went to the New York Film Academy. You've taken Robert McKee. You've taken John Truby. You have all this
all
tremendous
the things.
experience in writing, right?
Not at all. I took a creative writing class, like an intro to creative writing at my community college, and that is the extent of my writing education.
Yeah.
Maybe,
When Mark said
maybe
that,
that's all you need is an intro.
Yeah, maybe.
yeah, when Mark told me that you didn't have any formal education in writing, I'm thinking like, how is this guy getting three plays produced, and he's doing all this stuff? And I find that amazing, and it just shows that you don't have to be connected, you don't have to have all this expensive education. That if you just do it, you can get stuff made.
Yeah, and I do owe a lot of I owe everything to Kumakua Theater. I will start with that. Kumakua Theater is a small little black box theater in downtown Honolulu, and it's a site specific theater. So they only produce plays that are either written by local playwrights. The content of the play has to deal with something related to Hawaii or all of Pacifica, and it has to feature local actors. So
Oh
were it
wow.
not for this particular space, I wouldn't necessarily have a vessel in which to tell these stories, right? I when I wrote my first play, Aihula, there's a lot of great playwrights out there who just never get their stuff produced just because they don't
Yeah.
have the means in order to produce it. They spent 3 or 4 years writing this play, and then it's just now become a file in their computer, and they send it off to countless theaters. But if they don't know you, you don't know them, they're not going to spend the time to really like look at the play and unless it's like a groundbreaking, right? So it's just I've just been very grateful and gracious to have Kumukua Theater in my life because they, you know, had they not produced my first play, I wouldn't be a writer, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful theater, and it's right there in the heart of downtown Hawaii,
mhm. Yeah,
in a historic building. And
yeah.
you know, can I ask? I'm just kind of curious on a production like this.
Mhm.
Are you paid? Is the cast paid? How is the production like that funded?
Yeah, so Kumko Theater is a nonprofit theater. We get a lot of money from grants and support from the government. Not so much right now because of our current political climate. But we are very well supported by the community. We have a strong subscriber base. So it runs like professional theater. You know, our
Yeah,
actors get paid a stipend. They don't get paid, um, you know, enough to be. You know, they do it.
yeah.
Everyone still does it for love. It's definitely a for love theater. But they do have a budget, so I get paid royalties for all the plays that they produce.
Yeah.
And the director gets paid. Yeah, so everyone gets paid. We get a strong budget for costumes and set, and anything we need for this thing to become a reality, they help us and they make it happen.
Mark,
Wow.
what was it about the play that just when you first saw it? Because you had it's such it seems like a visceral reaction to this. What was it that caught your eye or ear about it?
Well, to yeah, go back a little bit before that. I have a good friend who's in the play,
Mm.
Kevin,
Hmm.
and Kevin, who used to run the Koa Theater, which you know. Okay,
Yes, yes.
a highly experimental theater here, and unfortunately
Hmm.
couldn't keep the doors open. But because of that, he and Elsha, my wife, and I became good friends. So we always stay in touch, and he lets me knows what he's doing, and it's interesting. He said, "Okay, I'm building a lot of sets now." He built the set for this play and sets for. I
Hmm.
said, "Well, that's great." He said, "Oh, by the way, I'm in this one." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, it's called The Golden Gaze." And right away, I went, "You're kidding?" Because I go, "This." Now I'm like you, Derek. I was very curious. I said, "The Golden, what is this?" He said, and but in before I even got to respond to Kevin, he said, and just to entice you to come and see the play. Here's a picture of me in my fabulousness in drag. And this is what Kevin is what 6'2", 6'3".
Yes.
He's like a football player.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's massive. And the picture of him in drag is gorgeous. And right away,
Yeah.
Elsa and I went, we have to go. So that was the thing that got me. I mean, so it was through a friend.
Yeah,
Which is great because that's the best marketing ever is word of mouth and all
Yeah.
that. And so Elsha and I went to see it. We were amazed immediately by the whole event on many, many levels, which we can talk about. And then afterwards, we met Oki at the sort of the gathering after the outside on the patio. Um, and that's when I decided, and I knew you were coming to Hawaii, Derek. I said, okay,
yeah,
Derek has to see this, and then that's when it all started snowballing.
Hmm.
yeah.
But it was, but I was knowing pretty much almost as much as we've covered so far now about Oki, knowing that much, seeing the play. My expectations were low.
Mm.
I go,
That's a
okay,
great. That's a great expectation to watch one of my plays.
only done
See,
It's only
see,
up from
three
there.
plays, Hawaii specific theater. Okay, okay,
I love
see,
and
it.
I know after all
But
my
okay,
years in theater.
what's so funny is that my expectations were so high because Mark was so high on this thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and mine were low.
Yeah,
Although I was just looking forward to seeing Kevin in drag. I just want,
Yeah.
I
yeah,
wanted to see that picture come alive. And so Elsa and I went and saw it, and actually, which was really interesting, there were some friends of ours who were there too. That was not planned. But that was nice. And then as the play started to unfold in front of us, I went, "Oh my God, wait a minute, this is really good."
Mm.
And
yeah,
and the actors are really good. I want to talk to you about where you find
yeah,
these actors and working
Hmm.
with the actors. It was very well cast. But then I started to realize, I think getting more into Act Two, how brilliantly written it was. As
Hmm.
all the different
Okay.
elements and threads started to come together, I went, "Oh my God, this guy is really good."
Hmm.
And one thing I was just talking just before you came on. Okay, I was talking to Derek about Derek and I have spent decades, literally decades, probably since before you were born. I don't know, working with and promoting and supporting writers, people who teach writing, people who teach screenwriting, and the hundreds and thousands of people we know who have tried to write something that they could sell. I mean,
Mm.
it's huge, and there's a whole industry there. And Derek mentioned a few of the names up front, like Robert McKee and USC and all those places where you can go to study playwriting. You did, or screenwriting. You did none of that.
I
And
did
I
none of that.
and I have a feeling. Let me see. I don't. I have a feeling the fact that you've done none of that is one of your strengths. That you
Yeah,
Yeah,
that you may not know right now. We may not know, but
yeah.
there's something about the innocence of that play,
Mm.
um, and also something about the courage. It's a very courageous play, and the characters and how well defined all the characters are as they are struggling
Mm.
to, like in the Golden Girls, and they're aging, four aging gays. They're struggling to fulfill their dreams, their hopes, their dreams, and the clear definition of these characters and the journeys they go on. But then simultaneously, Oki, damn you, you do this. You keep twisting the play on us. You say, guess what? Guess where we're going. We hear about the end of the first act, something about a drag show. But
Hmm.
not only do we hear about it, but we get it. We get the whole
yeah.
drag. I mean, so you keep throwing some, and I'm going, this guy really knows what he's doing. And so I'm realizing you know what you're doing without
I just don't know
knowing,
how I'm doing it.
without knowing that you know.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
And I would
take us
I
through the
would stay there.
process.
I would just stay in that.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, take us through the process. How did you write this? From like so you had the initial idea. So
yes.
do you put down notes? Do you do an outline? Do you just start writing it? Do you know what your
Hmm.
ending's going to be? What is your whole storytelling process?
Yeah. So, I've been blessed enough to have the opportunity to do everything in the theatrical world, from acting to assistant directing to doing props and designing sounds. And because I've never been a school type of person, early on in my life, I made a very conscious decision to, in lieu of school, to just absorb as much as I possibly can from every
Yeah,
opportunity that's given to me. So, as an actor, I know what I like to perform on stage. I know when I'm getting given a scene that's juicy and that's just like fun, and it's both heartbreaking and terrifying and exciting at the same time. Like, I live for those moments as an actor, right? And then I've been in the directorial shoes where I can see a scene and see that there's the complications and levels within that scene and things that you can like envision that just comes from things that are not necessarily even on the page, but I can see it, so I take all of that and I just write what I would want to do on stage personally. Um, so I guess the process starts with with the idea, and
yeah,
then I often say I dream things, which is very true. I'll go to sleep. Like right before I go to sleep, I'll think about elements of the play or where I want it to go, and magically I'll dream up these things in my sleep, and then I'll wake up the next day and be like, okay, I know exactly what I saw. I just
nice.
need to work there. So it's like, there's a scene in the play where it was that makeup scene, um, where it was the ex-husband and the ex-wife, and the ex-wife was putting her ex-husband in drag, which
A,
Fantastic scene.
a great
yeah,
scene, a great
yeah.
Yeah,
scene.
Yeah, I dreamed about that moment. I just thought, well, how beautiful would it be? I know I'm gonna put this guy in drag, but how much more, how not groundbreaking, but how beautiful would it be for
yeah,
his family to be the ones to do it for him?
yeah,
Um, and then and for a divorced couple to have the hardest conversation ever to have in the vice of having to put someone in drag makeup. I just thought it was
yeah.
both hilarious and beautiful at the same time. So I knew I had things like that. I had elements that I knew I needed to build toward, and then I would
Yeah.
plot it in my mental framework, and then
Yeah.
everything else would just like, hey, how do I take this story and get to that point? So
Yeah.
I normally, my process normally starts with who do I see these characters as? So I'll build the characters first. With this particular play, it was easy, right? Because I just used the framework of the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
I uh, broke down who each of these ladies were, what their struggles were, what their strengths, what you love about them, what you don't like necessarily like about them, because that's what makes a character real, right? Is their
Yeah.
imperfections. And I make sure that each of these characters has imperfection because I often watch plays and I tell myself, oh, this guy's way too perfect. And I don't like him because of that. Um,
Yeah.
so so I'll build characters that way. I will instantly identify like, okay, well, I know who these characters are. Now, what do they need to accomplish for the both the character, the actor, and the audience to be satisfied by
Yeah.
the end? Um, and that's where I go. Yeah, I
It
feel like
was
I watch. Yep.
it was incredibly well cast. I mean, the cast was just so good. Everybody knew their particular roles. You know who I really loved was is it Charles Hill, the one that played sort of the
Yeah.
Betty White?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Just
Yeah.
so much empathy and just he's so funny and just fit that part so well. Now, I was curious. I actually asked Mark this. I said, "Is the cast gay?" I didn't know if the cast was gay or not, and he
Mm.
said, "Well, Kevin's not. Is the rest of the cast gay?"
Yeah.
Oh,
I think so. I don't know. I can
Not sure.
sexuality. I mean,
that's an
it's
it's
pretty
an odd
clear.
question, but
I think I will say, for the exception of Kevin and
yeah,
Shiro, who played Hiro in the show, the
yeah,
Japanese transplant. I think
yeah.
they were the only two heterosexual
Okay,
men. Yeah, everyone else, with the exception of the ladies, were queer.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah,
That's
and I think
funny. No,
it
that's
would,
great.
yeah. And for Kevin, I mean, it we did really want all of the actors to be queer because there's a certain level of authenticity that comes
Sure.
from that, right? But then if we were going to cast anyone heterosexual, it would be Kevin's character, right? Because technically the character has lived his life
Right.
as a quote unquote straight guy, right? He marries a woman
Yeah.
and has a daughter, and it's not necessarily until late in his age that he tries to come to terms with his sexuality. So I think it just worked that way.
Okay, let me ask you a question because I noticed I was saying gay, you were saying queer, and I want to know
Hmm.
what's the differentiation, or is there differentiation that something is more appropriate or more proper when you're talking about this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of like conversationally, if we're talking about specific things that cover like different elements of queer culture, then you would just use queer, right? Queer is like an umbrella term that covers everything within the queer community, whether it be gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so I mean, it's just more specific. Like if you're talking about something specifically within the gay culture, like yeah, then you would use the term gay. But I think in terms of what is more inclusive, which is always a better route to take in terms of conversations, um, queer is just a more inclusive term to use that kind of covers all of the elements within that community. So I
Yeah.
think it's just like a yeah, safer,
Okay,
not say,
good.
oh no, say yeah, just more just just a more general,
Okay,
inclusive.
good to know. Yeah, because
Great.
I said gay and then I saw you sort of transition towards queer and I thought, okay, maybe I missed something here. So I'm glad I was able to clarify that. So
That's
that's
good
Yeah,
to
great.
yeah,
know.
no, it's a great question. Yeah.
Now, when you were writing it, though, did you know that you were going to submit it to the Kumukahua Theater, or
Yeah.
did you just not sure? Were you just not sure what you were going to do with it yet?
Yeah, so like I said, Kumu produced my first two plays.
Yeah.
And then when I started writing Golden Gaze, I gave Harry Wong, who was the artistic director, the first 30 pages. Once I had the first 30 pages, I knew I already had something. I was like, oh,
Uh,
this is this is gonna be something. And so I just gave him the first 30 pages and I just simply told him, hey Harry, this is what I'm working on right now.
yeah.
Let me know if you have any thoughts. I only asked him for thoughts and ideas, and his response was, we're gonna put it into the next season, so finish it. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. normally, I mean that's great because normally I drag my feet on a lot of things, right? And because
Yeah.
this had a like a hard date, it was gonna literally gonna
Oh,
open.
wow.
I was
Okay.
like, well, okay, I need to finish it. So yeah,
That's
But
funny.
as you said before, okay, you're very lucky to have that theater and that theater
yes,
Yeah.
community and
yes,
the focus of that theater. Um, and there are a lot of people, obviously, in the theater world who that have like the Steppenwolf Company. There are certain companies
hmm
that support a certain type of theater, and then and so they become very fertile ground for developing stuff.
yes,
And because I mean, knowing what little I know about the other theaters here in Hawaii, if you've gone to any of them, except maybe the Koa Theater when Kevin was running,
hmm
any of the others, they go, no, no, I don't think this is for us.
yeah,
But
But
you
you know
have,
what's amazing is there's obviously a market for it because that theater was packed. It was packed. They
hmm
extended,
it was
Oki
extended.
run there. So there was definitely a hunger for seeing that kind of play and that kind of market.
hmm
And
Yeah.
I remember Mark, you asked him, you said, "What's the chance this could be extended and or that they would bring it back?" And it seemed like just based on the way the theater operates, that wasn't a possibility, or they couldn't. I wasn't sure exactly why couldn't they squeeze it in and do another run.
yeah, yeah. I mean, um, I don't know. It's all the financials, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard because with the nature of Kumu. We exclusively do world premieres, right? So a
Ah, okay.
playhouse like Diamond Head Theater or Manoa Valley Theater, they produce like they're doing Come From Away, right? That already has a following, and it's already there's already a hunger to see
Yeah.
this type of play because it's established, right? With every play that premieres at Kumiko Theater, we almost have to like prove ourselves in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the run.
Ah,
Like we have to prove to the first group of people that comes to see the show that hey, this is a good show, and then it's the word of mouth that sells the show, right?
yeah.
um yeah, so there's very few plays like maybe Lee Cataluna. She's one of my favorite writers. Like anything she writes is just groundbreaking and sells out
Yeah.
instantly. So if you have that kind of notoriety, you can produce a play that no one knows about because everyone loves Lee Cataluna, right? Um, but with newer writers like myself, like it takes a little bit more time to kind of like
Yeah.
get the word of mouth out there. And then and then once we sell the run, then we extend. But
Wow.
yeah,
Were,
Okay.
were
That
your
brings up
previous
another.
plays as successful?
I'm sorry.
Were your previous plays as successful?
Yeah, yes, Who You Again premiered in 2023. Um, that was equally successful, I think. It was just hard because it came off of the tail of the pandemic. So
Ah,
we weren't, so it was in 2020, it wasn't even 2023. I'm sorry, it was 2022.
yeah.
And the theater, I think it was the second play to be performed in front of a live audience again. And then
Wow.
people still had to like social distance in the theater, so we weren't filling the theater to
Oh,
capacity. So there
yeah.
was like and then we were like, it was that like, hey, it's okay, it's safe, come back into the theater. So it was kind of like that fight and struggle. But we did extend it, so it did sell out. And then we extended that by a weekend.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I was back in 2016, and no one knew who I was. Um, but I hula was like a hula play, right? It was like a musical, but instead of music, it was hula, so it was new and groundbreaking at the time.
That's
And
great.
I think that
Wow.
in addition to just having a great cast and a great story, the hula also sold that. So that was
Yeah.
pretty, yeah, that was really really
So,
successful as well. Yeah.
so I have a
Okay.
question about your process. So here you are um, I don't want to say a novice playwright because I don't consider you a novice at all, but you have a new play coming out, especially at the Kuma Theater. You know, what is the process there? Take just a little bit of going through the casting, and there's
Mm,
one part of this, the casting, getting the actors, the rehearsal process. Now you're an actor and
hmm
you've also been close to directing or you have directed, so you know
hmm
what you want.
Yeah.
And what is that whole process through and how what I'm really interested in, because as Derek knows, I'm sometimes much more interested in the process
Mm,
of creating something than the final product. There are a lot
yeah.
of projects I've worked on, and the process was great. The final project didn't work that well, but boy, did we learn a lot. So I'm
Yeah.
curious of what you're learning because this process, besides just writing the play, but having your plays produced, is your
Hmm.
school. You've
Yeah.
created a school, and with all those actors, great actors coming in, and a director, and all those elements. What
Mhm.
is that like for you?
Yeah, so this is the second play that I've worked with Denny Hiranaga, who is the director of The Golden Gaze. So he and I worked together to produce Who You Again, and the way that we work is very collaborative. He allows me the opportunity to be me, which my me in the
Yeah.
process is quite extra. Um, I don't know. I always tell people I don't know that I would ever label myself as specifically just a playwright because I do it all, right? I'm an actor and I have this I have a mind for directing and I also write. And I will never be the kind of playwright, at least for its world premiere, to put my play in the hands of a director and be like, okay, I'll see you guys opening night. Like I would never do
Yeah.
that. I was there every single rehearsal. I was there for casting.
Wow.
I was part of every single decision. Um, and so the way that me and Denny works it's very collaborative and there's a lot of like give and take. So and then what's great about Kumu, right? It is a developmental theater. So all the actors who come into the project come with the caveat of knowing, hey, this is the script that we're giving you on day one is probably not going to be the script that you're performing opening night. And that is definitely the process. Like we started on
Yeah.
the first read through. It was, I think, the play was 110 pages. No, I'm sorry. Yes, 110 pages. By opening night, we brought it down to about 98,
Good.
98 pages. So there's a lot of cuts, there's a lot of edits, there's a lot of opportunities for Jenny to have specific ideas and me to fight him on it, and then me to eventually be like, yeah, you know what? Okay, you're right. Go ahead. And then vice versa, right? And I think it's that collaborative and sometimes combative energy that just creates magic sometimes because it just kind of shows how much passion we all have for this
Yeah.
crafts, right? So yeah, there was the process from day one to opening night is very both chaotic and organized and magical and beautiful in all of its weird ways. Yeah.
Now, okay, what did you cut? Was there something that you cut that you didn't want to cut, but he convinced you to cut it?
Um, yeah, there was a lot of, I mean, there a lot of what was nice about this particular play. Um, I I was involved in all of the cuts. So any cut
Yeah.
that was made was primarily my decision first.
Okay.
Um, any cuts that they had, they would present to me, and then I would like look at it and be like, yeah, okay, we'll cut it. I think a lot of the cuts really were like extra repetitive lines. There was a lot of jokes that I wrote in
Yeah.
that were not necessary at the end of the day. You know, I wrote the play like a sitcom, right? So I wanted there to be a
Yeah.
joke every 10 seconds. I wanted there to be a joke. I wanted to be
Oh,
a laugh
okay.
every, I wanted to be a laugh
Yeah.
every 10 seconds. And yeah, and then I think in terms of just like the time, I mean, it was still a long play, but it could have been longer. So
Yeah.
thankfully we cut a bunch of stuff, but it was really
Yeah.
just I think the most substantial cuts were like some big chunks of jokes, like both the setup and the build up and then the punchline, that kind of takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
So just by cutting a certain joke, that cuts like a good substantial amount of lines because there's all the setup, right? So that I don't know that there was anything specifically that was cut that I was like really really heartbroken about.
Yeah.
Because like I said, yeah, majority of the substantial cuts were motivated by me specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it all just kind of stemmed from timing. We just needed to shorten it.
Now, I'm
Mark.
going to bring up something. People who are
Yeah.
listening to this hear Golden Girls sitcom, all that, which is very much, very, very accurate. It is
Yeah.
a male gay version in a way of Golden Girls. Okay, that. And yes, sitcom, yeah. But I want to talk about the musical numbers, which nobody would expect, because
Mm,
the musical numbers in there are amazing. First of
Hmm.
all, unexpected,
Hmm.
but to me, very they grow out of the drama that's going on or the comedy
Yeah.
that's going on or the needs of and they're very, very creative, very, very inventive.
And when they come into the audience, it brings everybody into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now was that those I'm assuming were in the original draft.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
Um,
where do you come up with those ideas?
yeah. I So I don't know where the drag idea came. It was an episode. Okay, there was an episode of the Golden Girls where the girls ended up dancing, and it did not necessarily came out of nowhere, but I remember watching it and be like, oh my God, these old ladies like still got it. Like they had tights on. Betty White had fabulous legs, and I was like, oh my God, she's still like sexy. And then we're dancing, and it was yeah, it was just a really beautiful thing to see, and it was unexpected to see uh people of this I guess age doing something
Hmm.
like this, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's where that came from. I wanted to subvert the expectation of like they're maybe old men, but we're gonna put them in drag anyways. And then like Kumukua Theater, all of the plays that we produce are very like cultural and they're very important, and then they kind of fall within a certain pattern. Which I love. I've
Yeah.
spent 10 years at Kumu doing all these plays, right? And I love it. I wanted to give the audience something different.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that I knew that I wrote the character of Kelsey specifically for one of my closest friends, Alexis Drain,
Hmm.
and I wanted her, when I was writing the character, the character was important in her own way, but she never really had a moment to shine. And I wanted
Yeah.
Alexis, the actor, specifically to shine. So that really came out of greed, right? As an artist, I'm like, I'm gonna give this girl a moment in this play for the audience to just be like, wow, look at this bitch. Oh, I'm sorry, I said bitch.
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
You know what it kind of reminded me of was a bit of when I saw Mamma Mia in the
Mm,
theater. That
mhm.
it just all of us it's almost like the play is calling for that musical interlude to just
Yeah.
like break away. And
Hmm.
that's what I found so exciting about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I needed like I had established the idea that we're gonna build toward this drag show at the end of Act One, and I think, and then the audience leaves for intermission, and they're probably all wondering like, oh, like what kind of drag show are these old guys gonna do, really?
Yeah.
And then I really wanted the first scene of Act Two to be like, oh shit, we're gonna see a drag show by the end of this show. And
Yeah.
I wanted to give them just like a solid drag number to be like, oh, okay, we're in it. Let's get to the end. We want to see this drag show. And it's all because Alexis was just so great at just
Yeah.
delivering that lip sync. Yeah, it's just like a magical moment. I just love
Yeah.
that's probably one of my favorite
But
moments of
but
the
but
play.
also it's for the character. Okay, that for Kelsey, the um how it revealed her insecurities and then
Hmm.
revealed her inner
Yeah.
strengths all through this
Yeah,
and beautifully staged.
yeah,
Beautifully, even especially, and I'm not ruining anything, on the stool, the
yeah,
rotating stool that I mean that's very
Yeah.
cinematic the way you did that. I went, oh, look at this. And then and what I love is you break there's no convention. You break a rule. Suddenly everybody in the play is a part of the musical number.
yeah,
Yeah.
It takes over, and that's sort of like you're right, Derek. That's sort of like Mamma Mia. Okay, we're doing a musical number. We're all in it.
Yeah.
hmm
But
yeah.
but
And that was
what it revealed about that character, and even at the end when she realizes there's that moment when she what happened? There's
yeah,
like
yeah,
well, we all saw what happened.
yeah.
Well, and what was
Fantastic.
great was, even though, you're approaching it from the queer perspective and whatnot, the whole thing about love and loss, I think
Hmm.
everybody can identify with that. I mean, I think there was a moment when I can't remember specifically what he was talking about. It was the Charles was
Hmm.
talking, and I just thought everybody in this theater now is thinking about somebody that they lost
Yeah.
or that they used to love. And you
Hmm.
could just feel it in the theater. It was like a almost like a weird love that everybody has experienced this together.
Mm.
And to me, it was those moments that I love too. I mean, the musical numbers amazing, but I think the fact that you made people feel things that they went through in their life that was just a
Yeah.
tremendous element of the show.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what was really important to me is that each of these characters have a story after this story,
Yeah,
especially because we're dealing with a story, we're dealing with a play that's um, about a demographic of people who, in a lot of society's minds, are in their last chapter of their story. And I think that's stupid, right? I mean,
yeah,
we don't know when our last chapter is. I could be in my last chapter, right? So to kind of like put them in a box in that way was something I really wanted to like break and like get out of that, right? And I
yeah,
think that in terms of losing a loved one or just becoming a widow, I mean, it's heartbreaking, right?
yeah.
I thought about my mom, who we lost my father back in 2010, and so it's been 15 plus years and she's never met someone. And I don't know if she's ever just opened her heart to the possibility of new love, right? And it's
Right.
just, I don't know if that's out of guilt or out of just, I don't know where, I don't know
Loyalty.
necessarily our loyalty, yeah. But I really wanted, um, Jimmy's story to really reflect this idea of like,
Yeah,
you know what, it's okay to go on living, and you should,
Mhm.
rightfully so, you should go on living in any way that you feel you should, right?
yeah.
And if that leads to happiness and joy, that is the path that you should take for absolutely, right?
And what's the challenge of writing sort of a queer-based story, especially in today's environment? I
Mm,
mean, it's almost like it seems like you can't do it anymore,
yeah.
and that it was really bold and over the top. And does that scare you? Does the environment scare you? That where's the market going to be for productions like this?
Yeah, I don't know that I was necessarily scared. I mean, we're here, right? We're here, and we still want to see our stories. I think uh, it's now more advantageous to us to
Yeah,
tell these stories because there are people trying to silence us. But I mean, the queer community have been people have been trying to silence the queer community for ages and ages and ages. But
yeah, okay, yeah,
still we shout, right? Um, I think what was important for me, I suppose, as a queer writer and creating a queer story, is that we didn't lead to we didn't sit in its sadness.
yeah.
The queer community has faced a lot of sadness. We faced a lot of tragedy. Faced a lot of struggle. And oftentimes, as beautiful as they are and as important as they are, a lot of the stories that have been created has kind of sat within that sadness. There's been stories that have been like, hey, this is the struggle we faced, and we're gonna sit in that struggle, and you should feel
Yeah.
feel our pain. I really wanted to create a story that sat in its joy and in
Oh,
its
yeah.
beauty. So that was one of the greatest compliments I got from a lot of the queer audience members who came to see the show. They said that
Yeah.
it was just refreshing to see a story that had a happy ending,
Wow. Yeah.
that celebrated being queer, opposed to just kind of like sitting in queer sadness, which is often like
Yeah.
all of us negative
Yeah.
Nancy's like
Yeah.
to do.
And
Yeah.
I also, that's great. And also, okay, to me, ironically, your play is not about being queer.
No,
It's
No.
not about, just like it's not about living in Hawaii either. That just
yeah,
happens to be, for these characters, queer,
hmm,
living in Hawaii. But it is about, it's more about aging, and
hmm,
it's more about a sense of loss. And it's obviously because
Yeah.
you repeat it many times in there, it's about family. And
hmm,
and what the word family or the term or the idea of family really means.
hmm,
And these characters happen to be queer. And I think that that's the joy of it. Because I remember watching it the first time, knowing what it's about, but going, you're not um, you're not throwing the queerness of the thing in my face at
yeah,
all.
Yeah.
hmm,
It's just there. And what that's what I loved about it. I felt like I was allowed inside that world
mm,
without anybody pushing it on me. It's just like
Yeah.
I remember this is a long time ago. I saw a one-man show in Los Angeles about this autobiographical show about a guy and queer and what he had gone through in his life. Now, obviously, not obviously, but the audience was filled with the queer community.
Mm,
It was a great show, but nothing about the show. The show, it's all about my experience. I sat there and go, damn, I wish I was a part of this community.
mm,
This is a
You wish you
great,
were.
I felt the energy and the support and the love of that community at that play
mhm.
before it and after it. I met the guy and all that. That doesn't, but nothing to do about the play, but that community. And that's where I felt you allowed me inside that community, inside that world, without trying to make without an agenda from you.
Yes.
Oh, see, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, did you get an idea over the course of the run as to what percentage was queer, what percentage wasn't? I mean, did it matter, or did you notice anything?
I did. I mean, I did notice. I mean, it was kind of 50-50,
Okay.
which was fun, right? Because I mean, we what was there was a lot of secret goals that I had for this play, right? Being that I've worked at this theater for so long,
Yeah.
um, I wanted to bring a new audience to Kumu. I wanted to bring people into the theater who weren't necessarily Kumu Kumu theater patrons.
Right.
Um, so that was what was cool. I saw a lot of our season subscribers and a lot of people who just come to see Kumu shows all the time, and I saw a whole new wave of people who have never been to Kumu Theater before.
Ah.
Um, yeah, and not necessarily that there were like there were queer or queer
Yeah.
audience members, but they were just new faces and younger faces.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I saw a good amount of both. Yeah,
I think, well, 50-50 would be a great balance.
That
yeah,
would be amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I definitely think it was that around there. Yeah.
Okay, can you talk? And Mark, I'm curious, as a director, the staging of the show. I mean, you had the two main scenes. You had the living room and you
Hmm.
had the kitchen.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I got to ask you about the cheesecake thing, because the cheesecake thing is the only thing I don't think I understood. But we'll get to that in a second. What are the challenges of staging? I know you based it on the Golden Girls TV
Hmm.
show, and you sort of wrote it with a sitcom in mind. But what are the challenges of staging something like this over the course of 2, 3 hours in such a small environment, such an intimate environment?
Yeah, I know. So typically at Kumu, we tend to do less is more because it's such a smaller space.
Yeah,
Um, with this particular show, because it was Golden Girls, we really wanted to give the set. We really wanted to give the Golden Girls fans their set, right? Which was
yeah,
the living room and the kitchen. So
you're right.
like
Yeah,
so it was really important that we have those two elements. Um, I think, and then like when I write plays, I knew that I was writing it for Kumu Kumu Theater, so it's not like I was trying to write all the scenes would go from kitchen to living room, kitchen to living room. It wasn't until we got to the second act that I was like, well, we need to do a drag show. So is the drag show going to
yeah,
be in the living room or are we going to go somewhere else? And at a certain point, I just kind of gave up on trying to justify that with my words. And I let Denny figure that out. And Kevin. Um,
yeah,
uh, so yeah, I don't know. The struggles I think was just trying to keep it interesting. But at a certain Harry Wong, who I learned a lot from. One of the most groundbreaking plays for me that I got to work with him with was a play called Flowers of Hawaii, and it was centered around a Hawaiian family, and it was vignettes. So it was like maybe 14 different two-person scenes involving different people from this family. And
yeah,
each scene took place in a different room of the house, right? So one would be in the living room, one would be in the kitchen, one would be in the backyard, right? So I was like, oh, so how are we gonna do all of these different rooms? And it's never the same, right? Because it's just moved all around, right? And he's like, at the end of the day, we're just gonna keep everything black. So all the walls were black, all the furniture was black, and nothing but besides just the furniture elements really indicated where they were in terms of space. But the actors and the language transported the audience to where they needed to go. Um,
yeah,
so that's I've always held on to that. At the end of the day, um, the actors will take the audience wherever it is they need to go.
yeah.
So that's my.
Well,
Yeah.
Mark, let me ask you. I mean, as a director, as a story guru, what if you're a writer and you're a new writer and you're writing for budget or you're writing for an intimate location? What advice would you give to writers when they're
Mm.
trying to sort of write within those confines?
Oh, advice to, okay. Dealing with the confines that Oki is talking about, the limited space and limited budget and all of
Yeah,
that. I mean, your story, Oki, about the one you did with Harry Wong is great. Because I, in my career, have had many challenges like that. The thing is, strip it down to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, down to nothing means, okay, you got a scene, yeah, 3 actors in the scene. Okay, you got those 3 actors. And what's the location? Does anybody have to sit down? Okay, we need a
Mm-hmm.
chair. Do you know, in other words, strip it away so that you're focusing on the essence of the scene and then slowly start to build in
uh,
pieces that you need. The key, which I think was Harry directing that play that you, yeah,
That
okay.
Flowers Hawaii, yeah.
Yeah. Because what he was doing, again, with the all black set,
Hmm.
and you know, Derek, from the film I made, the rehearsal scene 22 about interrogation,
yeah,
all black set. The whole set was black, and which was anyway. What that does is it triggers the audience's imagination. Theater, you must, my feeling is, trigger the audience's imagination. Too
Mm.
much theater now tries to emulate film and
Hmm.
spectacle. Yeah,
do everything, and you go, wow, wow. Then we are, as you and I have talked, Eric, amazed by what they can do.
yeah,
Yeah.
Look what they can do. They can fly. They can do, But wouldn't it be better if you had triggered my imagination? If I was watching Wicked and seeing her fly the first time in my imagination, it's going to be better than all the wires and stuff that you can do. Because if you're doing it with wires and all the projections and all that, then I'm going to be fascinated by technology. I want to be
yeah.
fascinated by the characters and the situation. So strip it. So just as Oki is talking about, strip it away.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Start with nothing.
Hmm.
yeah.
A quick note on that. I directed a play, okay, many years ago, very well known play, The Lion in Winter, which is 7 scenes, 7 different locations within a big castle. And I decided that we are not going to do it in a castle. I got rid of the castle to begin with. I decided because these are 7 people, this is in the 1800s, all fighting in a jungle. They're like animals in a jungle. I said, these are seven animals in a jungle trying to, keep from trying to kill each other or keep from being killed. They're trying to destroy each other.
Yeah.
It
Mm.
was set. My first thing is we're going to do it underground. These are animals that live
Uh,
underground. And then it became sort of an underground place, but it's all created out of rocks, these big rocks on the set. They looked a little bit like Stonehenge type stuff, but
yeah.
the rocks could move. And at every scene
Wow.
change, that would go into a blackout and sound effects, and the rocks would move and they'd be in a different configuration, which made no
Mm.
sense. But the
Yeah,
actors, just like always said, the actors made that the bedroom. The actors
Hmm.
made that because that was that was the character's world. So that's the audience's imagination. And nobody in the audience ever complained. Why didn't you have a real throne? We had a rock that you could turn around and
yeah.
you could sort of sit on it like a throne. That was the throne. So, audience's
Well,
imagination.
the one thing that Oki's play really did was I love spectacle. I love over the top things. And the
Mhm.
one thing that it made me want to do was actually go find more small theater and to see
Mm.
what's out there and to see what kind of productions are out there. Because I'm thinking, like, if they're producing this kind of level of production in a little black box, 100 people or whatnot, what else is out there that we don't know about, that we're not giving an opportunity for? And,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and I think that people have gotten away from that now because everything is a big spectacle, and just to be able to go see some beautiful storytelling in a small environment is so different. It's so lovely
Yeah.
just to do that, and it makes for
Hmm.
an amazing evening.
Yeah.
Now,
I
when you
will
say
say, oh,
go out and see small theater, you're not talking about Hawaii because there isn't much here.
yeah.
But
No, I'm
you're
talking
talking
here
in general, in general.
in general. Yeah,
Yeah, and I would also to add, I'm sorry I cut you off for a second there, Oki.
No,
Don't
no.
forget what you were going to say.
Okay.
Getting back to your point, this has to do with something that I've been doing my whole life, autobiographical one-person shows storytelling. The first one I did, Time Flies When You're Alive. basically it's one guy sitting on a chair, sometimes getting out of the chair, sometimes sitting on a chair for 2 hours, talking to you,
Yeah.
talking to the storyteller. And what's triggered is the audience's imagination. There are no other characters coming on. He will play all the characters.
Yeah.
The audience's imagination is so powerful.
Hmm.
And that to me is the best theater. The best theater in the world
Hmm.
is when you capture my attention because you trigger some. I'm a
Yeah.
participant. I'm not just watching a play. I'm
Yeah.
participating in a play. So
Yeah,
yes, Oki.
yeah, no, one of my favorite lines of dialogue from Shakespeare's writing is, think when we speak of horses that you see them printing their proud hooves in the receiving earth. It's literally your like
Yeah.
it's in their what a prologue, right? Where they're literally just
Yep.
it's an actor standing on stage saying, "Hey, we're not gonna have 1,000 horses on this stage, so when we talk about it, you better see it with your imagination." It's
Exactly.
Yeah.
beautiful. It's as simple as it can be. But I will say this though. Now that we've done the responsible artist thing and says, yeah, strip it away if it's not necessary. With this play, I definitely wanted a spectacle, and Kevin was able to give me a spectacle with
He
that
did.
set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But it
and
was
the
like,
be- and the beautiful thing is, oh, there's another aspect which you're just touching on. The let's see, I'm going to try to be really accurate. As the play is playing, the characters are not showing, for the most part, any awareness of us. They're not
Mm,
playing to us.
mhm,
yeah.
Well, but then on that the musical number with Kelsey, suddenly she's walking through the audience and playing, singing to us. So there's this growing connection with us and awareness to us to the point where characters that we've seen in the play will all come on and change the set in front of us while a scene is going on. And
mhm.
so now they are aware of us and they are, and it's this wonderful again, it's the audience's imagination. This wonderful agreement. This is how we're going to do it. We need to change the set. Watch. Here we're not
Mhm.
going to try to hide anything. We'll just do it in front of you.
So, okay,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
what's next? What's the big thing you want to work on next?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. Um, I have some ideas of writing other plays. I think I've made another conscious decision that it's time for me to expand upon what I'm able to accomplish with my writing. I did my first play was a test, right? Was the My first play was like, can I be a writer? Okay, maybe I can. So my second play was like, well, okay, I can write, but can I be a good writer?
Yeah.
And I think I proved that. And then with the third play, it was like the proof of like, hey, I've proven that I'm a good writer, but can I be a great writer that can take my writing off of the like beyond the shores of Hawaii? And I think
Yeah.
with this play, I've proven to myself that I can do that. So I think that's my next goal. I'm slowly starting to do the diligent work of creating these, I don't know, producer packets and putting my plays into cute little things that I
Nice.
can now put in the hands of producers off island
Yeah.
and try to get these plays that have proven themselves in a 100-seat theater to see if they have legs beyond Kumukua Theater, and I believe that they do, you know. So
That's that's great. And how important is it that it sounds like you establish goals for yourself. How important is
mhm.
that?
um, I've always been a very can I swear? Can I swear?
Of
Yes.
course,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Fuck
I've always
yeah.
been okay. I've always been the kind of person that just like says fuck it and just lets
Yeah.
life happen.
Yeah.
I early in my life I didn't necessarily make goals for myself because goals create barriers and they create obstacles, and I'm like, well, I if I don't have those obstacles, then I'll just go forward and do whatever I want to do without any like worry that what I'm doing is not fitting within that goal, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I tend to not do I tend to not make specific goals. I just have dreams. I just call it dreams, right? 'Cause it's more impressive when I've accomplished the dream rather than a goal. So yeah, I would say it's important because it's my dream, right? My
Yeah.
dream is that one day something that I've written um is created it can be as big as something that Lin Manuel Miranda has created, right? I think that's the dream.
Wow.
both on stage and on film. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of what I've written um, uh, can translate to both stage and film. You know, and I would love to
Yeah.
see both of those happen. Right. Um, I've just never had the courage or even the confidence to just do it. And I think that's where I'm at right now in this life. I think I just need to do it.
Yeah.
And however I get there is how I'll get there. But so long as every day that I'm waking up and I'm doing something in service to that dream,
Yeah.
I think that's what's important, yeah, to me.
Yeah. So is there along these lines, okay, is there another story that you have in mind? Is there not, I mean, in terms of where your mind as a playwright is going or as a
Hmm.
creative artist is going,
Yeah.
do you know what
Yeah.
you want to talk about, write about?
Um, yeah. Yes and no. I think what's important to me when I create a play, it has to check a lot of boxes for me. It has to be in honor of something or someone. I knew that I wanted Golden Gaze to be in honor of both my brother, in honor of the friends that I've had in my life, and in honor of the queer community that I've been so grateful to be part of.
Hmm.
Um, when I wrote Who You Again, which is about a grandmother who is facing dementia, I wrote that for my grandmother, you know, who I lost
Yeah.
the year prior. Like every play that I have, it has this fuel that propels it forward. And until I find that fuel, I tend to not light the match yet, right? So I need to find the fuel. So I think that's where I have ideas in my head of stories I want to tell that aren't necessarily fueled by anything quite yet. So I'm waiting for
But
that
okay.
fuel.
But okay. Let me ask you something though. What if a Hollywood producer comes to you and wants you to write a story based on some pre-existing IP that
Yeah.
doesn't fuel you, that you don't believe it, and it isn't in service to anybody, but they
Uh-huh.
go, "We're going to give you $125,000 to write the first draft."
That's plenty fuel for me.
Okay. That's
That
what
is
I wanted.
more than
Okay, that's
enough
what I
fuel
wanted to
for
hear.
me.
I
That's
love that.
good.
That's great. Always go to the pragmatic. That's so
There you
important.
go. Yeah, yeah. It's all dream and magic until money's involved, and then it's money.
That- That's great. Now, have
That's
you ever
good.
thought about looking at like the books like Robert McKee or Michael Haig or Truby? I mean, does that even interest you, or are you just happy
Um,
on your path?
you know, I guess what's bad. I don't know if it's bad, right? But what the thing with my journey, right, is because I have no educational background. I've done all these things. You know, I've gotten to this point, right, where it's gonna sound bad, but like I don't need school. I've already done it, right?
Yeah,
Um, but I do acknowledge that there is a lot of fundamental and structural things that I'm not privy to. But I've heard from directors that I write within that structure without necessarily
You
knowing
do.
it. So I think what I don't know what might help is that if I do understand that structure, maybe it'll elevate my writing in a way where I'll be
yeah,
able to
yeah.
know what I'm doing when I'm doing it, so it's not just an accident. I think that's what's important to me. So yeah, I think I will. I am interested in learning more fundamentals. However, I also don't want to get too boggled in the
Bog down
systematic
on it. Yeah,
structure of it all, because then it just becomes it won't. I don't know. I don't want to lose the fun of it all. Right
yeah,
now, I can sit in a coffee shop and just write without any worry that what I'm writing is falling within a certain structure because I'm just
right.
writing it to write it. And I because I'm an improviser and I'm a natural storyteller. I know story structure. You know, I know story structure
Yeah,
because I've created it in front of an audience, based off of a single word that they've given me, and I've done a one act play, and it just comes out of me subconsciously, and I don't know where it comes from, but it does, right? So like
yeah,
I've already kind of proven that I have that ability to kind of create a story that's built upon a platform and a tilt and a resolution. Um, but yeah, I definitely think I owe it to myself to get a little bit more fundamental education under my belt. Yeah.
Mark,
Yeah,
do you
but
think
I
it's fair?
would,
Do you think?
what's
Go
that?
ahead.
Oh, I would, on that subject. Okay, you mentioned something earlier about certain goals becoming an obstacle.
Hmm.
And so along this line of, reading McKee, Haig, Truby, all these other people, my feeling is you don't need to right now. In other words, don't, because they'll put a lot of oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. Oh, God. They may become obstacles to you. What
Mm.
I'm hearing from you, what little I know about you, you have learned by what you've been doing, by
Hmm.
improvisation, working on other plays, by being inspired by Golden Girls. Now, there's an education to watch the Gold. And I don't know how many of those episodes you watched. I mean, my guess is a lot.
Yeah.
You're learning a lot watching all of that, all of those
Hmm.
people, and by the work you're doing, and by working on impulse, instinct, improvisational. Stay there and keep doing that. You do know a lot about story and storytelling. I mean, structurally, that play is amazing, as if you had studied all that stuff, but you're doing it by instinct. So just leave it that way for the time
Oh,
being.
okay.
Thank
See,
you.
this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be the antagonist a little bit because I wonder if he had that knowledge of what Bob teaches or John teaches, that if that would even elevate his writing even more, because I think he's a smart enough writer that it's not going to influence the creativity, but he would know how to use it as a tool to enhance his writing.
Mm.
You may be right.
Hmm.
And the other thing I was going to ask you, Mark, was I think maybe the reason he understands story structure so well, as somebody that does improv and comedy, that's
Hmm.
all about structure. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
the
totally.
structure of joke and comedy is very difficult. So if that's sort of innate to your personality, that would explain your understanding of story.
Hmm.
Yeah. 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 I think one of my strongest, I don't know, elements of as a writer is I know how to make an audience cry and then make them laugh right after.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. I just know how to do it. I just because I've done it.
Yeah.
But and that's what I love. I always I have this story, which is like both morbid and weird at the same time. But okay, I'll just share it really quickly. When my father passed away,
Yeah.
so the story's gonna pass. Sorry. When my father passed away, we all went. He passed away in a care home, and we were at the care home, and we had all cried, and it was like, we cried, and we like let it all out, right? And then we had cried so that we couldn't cry anymore, and we were all kind of just waiting around now. And we were waiting. I think the nurses were going to come and take the body away, and we're all silent. No one was saying anything. And then I remember my mom had backed up to this cart, and she put her hand on something, and she started like unraveling it, and she was like wondering what it was. And we're all just kind of looking at her. I'm like, "What are you doing, mom?" And she's like, "Oh, I want to know what this is." And she finally opened up what it was, and it was the body bag.
Oh,
It was the body bag. I was like, oh my God, it's so body bag. She like unravels it back up and she puts it on the cart, and we all
that's
laugh,
great.
right? And it's just like that. That I always hold that memory so close to my heart because the reason why, right, is it's rooted in tragedy and comedy, right? There's those
Yeah.
two
Hmm.
masks. You cannot have one without the other, and everything that I do is rooted in that element, in that structure of things are tragic and they're funny because life is tragic.
Well,
And
this is like what they say that a person, a regular person, thinks that a guy dressed up as an old woman falling down the stairs is funny, whereas a comedian thinks an old woman falling down the stairs is funny.
yeah.
So that's sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, I think that has a lot to do with the natural talent that he has for storytelling, Mark.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
and
you.
you're right. I mean, it'd be interesting to getting back to your comment about how Oki could be inspired by some of the writings. Um, there's such a plethora of material out there by so many different writers. One I'm thinking of is Blake Snyder, who is a comedian himself, and the way he even
Yeah.
tells, in other words, the tone. Okay, so reading or following some of these people, you may find a voice out there
Mm,
that you read that you resonate with.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, here's what Mark and I are gonna do. Mark and I are gonna get together and we're gonna pick 5 books and we're gonna send them to you. We're gonna be
Oh,
pick the 5 because there's so many out there and 90% of them stink, but
yeah.
there's some really good ones out there. And let Mark and I sort of pick some books for you and we'll send them to you. And read them or balance your table, do whatever you want with them. But
I'll read them. I will read them.
Yeah, and I think along, I guess my point and Derek's point mixed together, reading one of those books, be very, I'm sure you'll do this. You'll look and say, well, that's not going to work for me. And just,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Just read it. So you don't get too many people, as Derek and I know, get trapped up into here's the formula. Here's,
Yeah.
and we're trying to keep, all of us are trying to keep away from that. From
It's not going to happen with Oki. You can see that's not
no,
going to happen with
no,
him, which is great. I mean that,
Yeah.
but you know why? Because he's got, I think, a strong enough voice that he's not looking for that.
Hmm.
He'll just pull
yep,
what he'll pull little nuggets here and there that I think will
yep,
just help him.
yep. So I look forward to whatever's next. And since you
Yeah.
and I live in the same island, the same town,
Yes.
I would love to, and even because I'm here, if you're going to have a reading or something, I would love to be there just to see what you're doing and support
Hey,
your
wait,
process.
if you have a reading in Hawaii, let me know when. That'll give me a good excuse to come out there again.
There you go.
There,
Yes.
there you go.
Mark, you have any other questions?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered just about everything. I'm looking at my notes. Um,
Okay, we were very
no,
excited
that,
to have
that
you on
I
because
think
we
I
had we
think
had
No,
so many
thank
that's
things
you.
that's
I'm so
great.
we had so many things we
grateful.
wanted to say about your play. So I'm glad that we got a chance to have this
Thank you. I
conversation.
really,
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, thank you.
You
And
good,
we'll do
Mark?
that. We'll do this again. Okay,
Yeah.
sometime on the next project.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And in 5 years, when Oki's picked to write the new Star Wars, I'm gonna say, tell me about that
Oh,
fire, Oki.
All right, a good Star Wars start. All right, a
yeah.
great Star Wars.
All right. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Pulse of Story. My name is Derek Christopher, along with Mark Travis and our friend and the great Oki, Ryan Okinaka. It's been a fantastic episode, and we're so glad you could have joined us, Oki.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.